Hi, I'm Leon Lovelace, and this is Unstoppable Force. Okay, I want to talk about the Standing Rock protests that are going on in North Dakota. Because I really should have talked about this a little bit earlier, especially before the mainstream media started talking about it. But I'll just jump in now and I'll just talk about just what's been going on. So I watched some of TYT Politics and how they first started covering it maybe 2 weeks ago or so, and just how they talk about it. They were in the protesters. They were able to go onto the building site and they're able to actually stand on the some of the equipment and just be at the site to protest. You know where the construction workers are, so they wouldn't be able to you know keep drilling and just work in the fields over there. So they're able to stop them from building or working on the pipeline for maybe a few days. So that was really good. And it also actually hurt the company about Jordan was reporting that it was about $1 million for each day that they were not able to do construction. So that really hurt their pockets. So I think maybe after a week or maybe a few days of them being able to actually protest at the construction site, um, the police started getting militarized. They really started pushing the boundaries of where the protests were able to go because the company was claiming that it was their land, but there's actually a treaty that needs to be looked at by some of the court systems, maybe the state or the federal court systems. They actually need to check that out to see, whose land it is. But the police have been militarized and they've really been forcing the protesters not be able to actually protest on the at the construction site so the company could keep building because 2 or 3 weeks ago they were around like 85 to 95% complete already. So that was just discouraging to hear that 2 weeks ago it was already really close to being completed already. But the Native Americans, they've been just protesting and just keeping at it just as hard as they've been able to. And just over the last week or the last few days, it's just been escalating. The police are just sending just more cops over there and just having more of a militarized presence. And they've been arresting people. Of course, they arrested some of the journalists there, which is just egregious because you can't arrest journalists or people that are filming it just because you want to hide what's going on, because we do have a First Amendment right to the free press. So whenever anybody or journalists are covering what's going on with video cameras and videotape, it's illegal to shut them down from covering what's going on because the people need to know, what's going on in the nation. So that's been going on. So hopefully there really won't be any more trying to suppress the journalists out there that go, not just TYT Politics, but Democracy Now! I forgot the woman that got arrested, but they did drop her charges that they levied on her. So that was good that they dropped them. And she did talk to the crowd, and she talked about how that really never happens. That the prosecutor would say, we need a charger for these offenses. Then the judge said, no, I'm actually gonna drop those charges. So she did say that was pretty rare. So it's a good thing that the judge actually dropped those charges. The federal government put some restrictions on the company about how they can't build maybe 20 miles or so away from the Missouri River, and they're already like right next to the Missouri River. So they're already violating some of the regulations that were placed upon them. But since the at least the state government is with the companies that are building this pipeline, they're not enforcing that at all. And the federal government, they're not really stepping in to try to make sure they're building the pipeline to where they are allowed to build it. That's just really egregious that they're breaking the law and they're not really getting imposed on, because even though the water, they're the water protectors are fighting for their water to make sure that they could drink and live off their land. The Missouri River supplies water to, probably tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that aren't just Native Americans. So the federal government really needs to crack down on this corporation, make sure they're not going to contaminate the water, because even though pipelines may leak less than if you deliver them on trucks, they're still going to leak, especially if they're not going to be regulated enough. So they really, leaks are rare. So we really need we need to get on Obama and his administration to make sure that they're really making sure they're building the code, because the codes is what makes us as safe as possible. But we really don't want them to have the pipeline, period, because we need to get off using fossil fuels anyway. Then I also want to talk about how us as minorities, black people, Hispanic people, even Asian people, we need to all come together and really fight against the federal government and sometimes the state governments whenever they come at one of us, because the Native Americans, they were the original they were the majority when the Europeans first came here to establish this nation. So of course the history of how Europeans came and just killed them and pushed them out of their land. So we really need to fight with the Native Americans, because all the U.S. governments try to do is just really steal and just crack down on the Native Americans, and really just rip away any of their power and any of their authority they have through any of the treaties that were signed. So we really need to come together as minorities and say, you know what, we're tired of the federal government and society pushing us down and oppressing us just because we're not white, because I'm really sick of it, and I know you're sick of it too. So we really need to come together and say, you know what, if you come at any of the other minorities, the rest of us gonna come and fight against you, because we're equals. We're not inferior to white people. So all this bullshit needs to stop. We're gonna come together and fight to make sure we're treated equally, because that you're just really continuing suffering, and just inequality isn't good for anybody, even though they disagree, but it's really not good for any of us. So we really need to fight together. So anytime the government's trying to crack down on Hispanics, black people, Native American people, Asian people, we need to come and fight and say, you know what, we've had enough of this. You're trying to impose harsh, unjust laws and unjust rules against them, and we've had enough of it. We're going to fight and make sure that we're all treated well, because we're humans, we're Americans just like everybody else, and we need to make sure we're protected just like everybody else is. So I just want to make that statement. And they're still fighting, so we'll just see what goes on in the next few days and next few weeks. So just thanks for watching. Check out one of my next videos.